Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button and hit subscribe for more captivating content. Now let's plunge into the depths. Picture, if you dare, a confrontation of giants, Charlemagne, the esteemed king of the Franks, in opposition to Napoleon Bonaparte, the fearsome emperor of France. Who in your opinion would come out on top? Charlemagne, known as the father of Europe, was not just a king, but a brilliant strategist. His reign from the late 7th to early 8th centuries was marked by a series of successful military campaigns that reshaped Europe and established him as one of history's great military leaders. Let's delve into some of his most notable strategies. One of Charlemagne's key tactics was the element of surprise. He understood the power of unpredictability in battle. He would often attack at dawn, when enemy forces were unprepared and vulnerable, or during religious festivals, when they were most likely to be off guard. This approach allowed him to seize the initiative and often led to decisive victories. Another aspect of Charlemagne's strategic genius was his ability to adapt to different terrains and conditions. Whether he was fighting in the treacherous mountains of Lombardy or the dense forests of Saxony, he was able to turn the landscape to his advantage. He would use the terrain to shield his troops, to ambush his enemies, or to cut off their escape routes. His ability to read and utilize the landscape was a critical factor in his many victories. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Charlemagne's strategy was his emphasis on cavalry. He understood the power of mobility on the battlefield. He developed a powerful force of mounted warriors, which he used to great effect. These cavalry units could move quickly across the battlefield, strike with devastating force, and then withdraw before the enemy could regroup. This gave Charlemagne a significant advantage in many of his battles. Charlemagne was not just a warrior, but a thinker. He understood the importance of strategy and planning. He knew that battles were not just won with swords and spears but with brains and cunning. His ability to outthink his enemies, to anticipate their moves and to respond with effective counter-strategies was a key factor in his success. Charlemagne's tactical brilliance was indeed a major factor in his successful reign. His strategies and tactics continue to be studied and admired by military historians and strategists today. His legacy as a military leader is as powerful and enduring as the empire he built. On the other hand, we have Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who revolutionized military tactics. Indeed, Napoleon's approach to warfare was so innovative that it completely transformed the landscape of battle strategy. His genius lay not just in his understanding of the battlefield but also in his ability to adapt and innovate. One of his most significant contributions was the development and implementation of the divisional system. This was a radical departure from the traditional linear approach, where large bodies of troops would stand shoulder to shoulder in long lines. Instead, Napoleon divided his armies into smaller autonomous units, each capable of independent action. This allowed for greater flexibility and responsiveness on the battlefield, giving Napoleon the ability to respond rapidly to changing circumstances. In addition to the divisional system, Napoleon revolutionized the use of artillery in warfare. He understood that artillery was not just a support weapon but a decisive force in its own right. Under his command, artillery became a key component of his battle strategy, used not just to weaken enemy lines but to shape the battlefield to his advantage. He would position his cannons in such a way as to funnel the enemy into kill zones where they could be cut down en masse. But perhaps the most defining characteristic of Napoleon's strategies was his emphasis on speed and mobility. He believed that, in war, the simplest moves are the best. He kept his plans simple, his lines of communication short, and his troops moving. His armies traveled light, lived off the land, and moved with a speed that left his enemies reeling. Napoleon's ability to move his armies rapidly across vast distances gave him a significant advantage. He could strike where the enemy was weakest, bypass strong points, and force his opponents to fight on terms of his choosing. This emphasis on mobility and speed became a defining characteristic of modern warfare. In conclusion, Napoleon's innovative strategies, the use of artillery, the divisional system, and his emphasis on speed and mobility revolutionized the way wars were fought. His influence can still be seen in the strategies and tactics used by modern armies. Napoleon's strategies have influenced military tactics even to this day. Now, let's imagine how a battle between these two legendary leaders might unfold. In our hypothetical battlefield, we have Charlemagne, the king of strategy, and Napoleon, the master tactician. Both are renowned for their genius in military tactics and strategies, each with their unique approach to war. Let's start by considering the terrain. Charlemagne's strategy often relied on using the terrain to his advantage. He would likely choose a battleground that offers natural defenses, such as a hill or a river. This would give his army an advantage in both defense and offense, making it difficult for Napoleon to successfully attack. On the other hand, Napoleon was known for his innovative use of artillery. His troops, armed with cannons, would bombard Charlemagne's forces from a distance, attempting to break their lines even before the battle truly begins. However, Charlemagne's choice of terrain would make this strategy less effective. The hills or rivers would provide cover for his troops, reducing the effectiveness of Napoleon's artillery. Next, let's look at troop composition. Charlemagne's army was composed primarily of heavy infantry and cavalry, while Napoleon's forces were a mix of infantry, cavalry, and artillery. This difference in troop composition would likely lead to a clash of styles on the battlefield. Charlemagne would likely form his troops into a shield wall, a formation designed to withstand attacks from all directions. His heavy cavalry would be positioned on the flanks, ready to charge into Napoleon's lines once they're weakened. Napoleon, in contrast, would utilize his artillery to its fullest, with infantry and cavalry supporting the cannons. He would try to break Charlemagne's shield wall with cannon fire, then send in his infantry and cavalry to exploit the gaps. Finally, we must consider the element of surprise. Both leaders were known for their ability to surprise their enemies, but in different ways. Charlemagne would often use feints and diversions to mislead his enemies, while Napoleon was known for his rapid, unexpected attacks. In our hypothetical battle, Charlemagne might use a feint to draw Napoleon's fire, then launch a surprise attack from a different direction. Napoleon, however, would likely respond with a swift counterattack, using his artillery to disrupt Charlemagne's forces and his infantry to seize the initiative. As the dust settles, we can see that this battle would not be decided by brute force alone. It would be a game of strategy and tactics, a chess match played out on a grand scale. Both leaders would be constantly adapting, changing their plans in response to their opponent's moves. It would be a battle of wits as much as a battle of arms. As we can see, this would be no ordinary battle but a clash of two strategic geniuses. So, who would win in this hypothetical battle of titans? This question has drawn us into an intriguing exploration of two of history's greatest military minds: Charlemagne, the king of strategy, and Napoleon Bonaparte, the master tactician. Each leader, in his own right, has left an indelible mark on history, their strategies studied and emulated by generations of military leaders and strategists. Charlemagne, the medieval monarch, was known for his surprise attacks, his ability to adapt to changing battle conditions, and his knack for exploiting his opponent's weaknesses. He was a master at using terrain to his advantage, setting up ambushes and maneuvers that left his enemies scrambling. He was also a skilled diplomat, using alliances and treaties as weapons as potent as any sword or spear. On the other hand, Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor, brought a whole new level of sophistication to warfare. He was a pioneer of the divisional system, breaking down his armies into smaller, more maneuverable units that could respond quickly to changing battlefield conditions. His innovative use of artillery, his ability to keep his troops motivated, and his knack for exploiting the enemy's mistakes were legendary. But who would triumph if these two titans clashed on the battlefield? It's a tantalizing question, isn't it? Analyzing their strategies, we see that Charlemagne's surprise attacks and adaptability could pose a significant challenge to Napoleon. However, Napoleon's innovative tactics, his use of artillery and divisional system, could potentially outmaneuver Charlemagne's strategies. While it's impossible to know for sure, based on their strategies and historical records, the scales might tilt in favor of, suspenseful pause, Napoleon. His innovative use of artillery and the divisional system could potentially outmaneuver Charlemagne's surprise attacks and adaptability. However, in the end, it would be a battle for the ages, a true test of strategic prowess and leadership.